The world assumed that power could buy anything, yet on that bright New Year's Eve morning, under the glowing winter sun that washed the city in gold, Adrian Kale, one of the richest CEOs in the country, found himself standing alone outside the most crowded restaurant in Brookshore Plaza. He had spent a lifetime believing that success built bridges, opened doors, and guaranteed belonging. But the growing line of families, couples, and friends, all laughing and clinging to each other as they waited for brunch reservations, proved him wrong. Despite his wealth, his tailored coat, and the familiar stare people always gave him when they recognized his face from the business magazines, not a single table was available for him. And beneath that humiliating truth ran a deeper ache. He wasn't just a billionaire who couldn't get a table. He was a man with no one to sit with. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Everyday Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Adrian's driver had dropped him off with the assumption that he would be ushered inside instantly. But for the first time in years, people weren't stepping aside to make room for him. No assistant rushed to fix anything. No event organizer smoothed the way. He stood in the cold sun, breathing in the scent of roasted coffee and warm pastries, listening to the chatter of strangers wishing each other a happy new year. And he felt something he had not allowed himself to feel in decades, a crushing, humiliating loneliness. His company had achieved historic profits. His name trended online whenever he appeared at an event. He owned penthouses in 5 countries, yet none of it filled the silence of the mornings when he ate alone or the nights when no one waited for him to return home. Inside the restaurant, sunlight streamed across clinking glasses, steaming plates, and a sea of smiling faces. New Year's Eve brunch had become a tradition for nearly everyone in the city, but as Adrian watched the hostess apologize to him again, eyes wide, her voice trembling because she never imagined she would have to turn away a man like him, he realized how painfully invisible he really was. He had spent years building an empire, but never a home. He had purchased everything except connection. He had commanded teams, but never embraced relationships. His world was silent, polished, and cold, a museum of achievements with no warmth between the walls. The city buzzed with life. Street vendors handed out paper horns, children held their parents' hands and pointed at decorations. People took pictures, swapped gifts, and planned parties. Yet Adrian was a ghost moving through color. He stepped aside, pretending to check his phone, pretending he didn't care, pretending the sting in his chest wasn't real. It wasn't that he was rejected, it was that even with all the doors open to him, none of them led to someone who cared whether he ate his New Year's Eve meal alone. As he waited, his memories drifted to his childhood in a small house he rarely spoke about. His parents had worked multiple jobs, leaving him alone most of the time. He had learned early that success was a shield and ambition was the only way out. He had promised himself that once he made it, once he became someone recognized and admired, life would feel full. But now, standing in a crowd of ordinary people experiencing extraordinary connection, he realized how wrong he'd been. Success without belonging meant nothing, and for all the years he had chased glory, he had never stopped long enough to let anyone into his world. Now his heart felt like an empty room, echoing, hollow, untouched. He took a breath, ready to turn back toward his car and return to his silent penthouse when a sudden movement caught his eye. In the far corner of the dining area, behind frost-edged windows, a man rose from his table. He looked ordinary in the most beautiful way. Tired but warm, worn but gentle. He had olive-brown skin, messy dark hair, a light beard, and eyes that carried both exhaustion and kindness. By his side sat a little girl in a yellow cardigan, her legs swinging above the floor, a handmade New Year's card in her hand. The man seemed to hesitate only a moment before lifting his arm high and waving toward the front door. Not at a waiter, not at the hostess, but at Adrian himself. Adrian blinked, startled by the sudden attention. The stranger waved again, firmer this time, as if signaling him to come in. The little girl followed her father's gesture and held up her card like a bright sunflower. People in line turned their heads, whispering. Even the hostess seemed unsure whether the invitation was real. But something in the man's expression, a simple, quiet sincerity, pulled Adrian forward as if his feet moved on their own. Inside the restaurant, warmth wrapped around him like the first genuine embrace he had felt in years. The smell of cinnamon, orange zest, and freshly baked bread filled the air. Glasses sparkled in the sunlight. Families leaned close, sharing food and laughter. And at that corner table stood the man who dared to do what no one else had done for Adrian in years: wave him over as if he mattered. The man introduced himself as Rowan Hale, a single father who worked night shifts repairing electronics. His daughter, Mina, smiled up at Adrian with the innocence only a child could hold. Adrian learned that they had been waiting for dessert, that they were nearly done, and that Rowan couldn't bear to see anyone left out on a day meant for togetherness. It didn't matter to him that the man he saw was the billionaire CEO known across the country. What he recognized instead was someone standing alone on a day meant for warmth. Rowan's table had only 2 chairs, but without hesitation he offered his own and stood beside Mina's seat instead. The restaurant staff scrambled to add another chair until a passing waiter brought one over. Adrian, unaccustomed to being welcomed into the life of a stranger, felt something unfamiliar stir within him. Gratitude that wasn't tied to business, admiration that wasn't about power, and a soft ache that reminded him what being included actually felt like. He spent the next hour watching Mina color on napkins, listening to Rowan speak about the challenges of raising a daughter alone after losing his wife 2 years earlier. Rowan described grief with honesty but also with strength, speaking of how Mina kept him going, how he worked late so he could make her lunches in the mornings, how he tried to give her a life filled with joy despite everything they lacked. Adrian listened, deeply moved by the tenderness in Rowan's voice. The bond between father and daughter felt like a light he had never known existed. As plates emptied and the sun climbed higher in the winter sky, conversation flowed with a naturalness Adrian had never experienced. He realized how long it had been since he sat with someone simply to share a moment. No negotiations, no schedules, no announcements, just human connection. He felt something slowly thaw inside him, a long-frozen longing finally touched by warmth. Rowan's kindness came without expectation. He didn't treat Adrian like a celebrity or a threat. He treated him like a person who deserved a seat on New Year's Eve. And that simple gesture softened Adrian's life in a way nothing else ever had. He found himself laughing, really laughing, for the first time since he was a teenager. Mina proudly offered him one of her colorful napkin drawings. Adrian folded it like a treasure and placed it inside his coat pocket. As they stood to leave, Rowan insisted that Adrian join them for their small New Year's Eve day tradition of taking a walk to the Riverside Park. Without thinking, Adrian agreed. The 3 stepped into the sunlight together, the billionaire, the single father, and the little girl holding both of their hands. In the park, children played, vendors sold pretzels, and sunlight danced on the water. Rowan shared stories about Mina learning to ride her bike, about his struggles balancing work and parenting, about choosing hope even on days that felt unbearably heavy. Adrian shared his own truths, not about business or wealth, but about loneliness, fear, and the ways success had carved him away from the world. Rowan listened without judgment, offering understanding and empathy instead of awe or pity. For the first time in years, Adrian felt seen. As the day warmed and families gathered for early celebrations, something changed within him. He realized he didn't want to return to his empty penthouse. He didn't want this day to end. He didn't want this connection to fade into a fleeting memory. Near the park exit, Mina handed Adrian another small drawing, a simple sketch of 3 figures holding hands under a bright sun. Adrian's throat tightened. It wasn't wealth he wanted. It was this: warmth, belonging, the feeling of being part of someone's world. And in that moment, he made a quiet promise to himself. The next year of his life would not be about growing his empire. It would be about growing his heart. If this story has touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement keeps these emotional stories alive. Special request: if any moment in this story made you feel something, please comment which part stayed with you the longest. As the sun dipped lower and the day moved toward evening celebrations, Adrian walked back through the city with Rowan and Mina by his side. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a billionaire or a CEO. He felt human. He felt connected. He felt hopeful. And on that New Year's Eve, under a shining winter sky, he learned that sometimes the richest moment of all is the one when a stranger stands up, waves you over, and makes you feel like you finally have a place at the table.